Deep dives and blue skies. Welcome back to Talking Blue with Nick, the best Dodgers analytical podcast that you can find.
How we doing, everybody? Welcome back to Talking Blue, the best Dodgers analytical podcast that you can find. I am your host, Nick. You're listening to episode 59 of Talking Blue, and as you can see by the title, the Dodgers have won 6 of their last 7. That's right. Happy pod today. We're going to be recapping a bunch of stuff. So before we get into all that, as always, you can get this podcast, Spotify. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can follow us on all social media at Talking Blue Pod. You can follow myself at Talking Blue Nick on X, live tweeting throughout all the games, all that kind of stuff. Dropping a lot of information, breakdowns about Yamamoto, some of the relievers, guys who have struggled, guys that have been hot, all of that. So you can go to my X at Talking Blue Nick to check out all of that, and you can follow us on Reddit at competitive-week8715, and I'll be dropping some stuff on there if you guys want to talk about the Dodgers on there. So, of course, last time I talked to you guys, the Dodgers have just come off the really embarrassing stretch against the Pirates and the Orioles. They have since then swept the Rockies. We'll briefly go over that. And then they just took 2 out of 3 against the San Francisco Giants. So we're going to talk about all of that injury stuff. So there's not many injury updates anymore. Finally, a lot of the guys have come off the IL since we've last talked. Kopech has already been off the IL, but Muncy came back, as well as Tommy Edman. So he is off the IL. So since then, of course, Max Muncy, he has been, it's like teams have been trying to hit him. In that Giants series, he got hit by a pitch twice, one on the wrist and then once actually in the head. Came out of the game both times for kind of precautionary reasons. Muncy seems fine. He is going to be okay to play against the Phillies this upcoming series. He's going to be all lefties, so I would imagine there'll be a game that he's not in there, but he should be ready to go. Will Smith did go on the IL, so it's kind of unfortunate when stuff like this happens where a guy gets hurt and then they try to see if he can, stick it out without going on the IL and stuff like that. It seems like what they tried to do with Will Smith. He got hit last week, almost 2 weeks ago, foul ball off of his hand in Pittsburgh. Ever since then, he's been kind of nursing it. He actually has played since then, but mostly Ben Rortvedt has been playing. And then it kind of got to a spot where I guess he really needed to let it heal for a little bit more. And with Ben Rortvedt playing well, they seemed to make the decision that it was best for Will to go on the IL. So that probably means come off the IL sometime against the Giants. Mark Stewart, obviously, who the Dodgers acquired from the Twins at the trade deadline, only pitched a few innings for the Dodgers. He is going to go on a rehab assignment this upcoming week. So look for him to be activated maybe at the end of the week or maybe next week, which would probably be in Arizona. So we'll see what happens there. And then really, Dalton Rushing, he's already been on a rehab assignment. So he probably could come back at some time during this homestand. And then the last guy is Roki Sasaki. This is really interesting since the last time we guys spoke. Every time I've talked about Sasaki since we've gone over his rehab stuff, he kind of hadn't been very good, and it's been really underwhelming. Kind of struggled down there. Velocity's been way down. It was starting to really look like the next time we see Sasaki would just be 2026 because there kind of would be no role for him. The last time he went out and pitched, he was actually almost sitting 100 miles an hour. He was sitting like 98, 99, hit triple digits a lot, pitched really good. Still didn't have the best numbers, but the velocity was way up, which is super interesting. He has since flown back to LA to kind of figure out what his role will be. He actually is going to go on another rehab start because since then he had like a little bit of a calf thing kind of flare up. So there's still a really good chance we don't see him. But with some of the guys struggling in the pen, and it seems like he's open to the idea of coming out of the pen, it really could be something that unfolds quickly where he comes to the Dodgers and he comes out of the pen or something. It's interesting. They've said that if Sasaki's going to be a part of any kind of postseason plan, they do need to see him on a big league mound, and it kind of sounded like they would like to see him start, but he is open to coming out of the pen. At this point, there's no room for him to start unless they just wanted to give a guy a rest, so we'll see what happens there, but some pretty interesting stuff with him. So, quickly, what I'm going to do is quickly recap the Rocky series. Not going to go through the games, but just talk about some of the guys who played really well. And then we'll recap the Giants games and get into some of the juicy stuff there. The Dodgers absolutely dominated the Rockies in every facet. The pitching was incredible, and then they paired that with really good offense. Like I said, they swept the Rockies. On Monday night, they won 3-1. Tyler Glasnow was absolutely dominant in this game. Glasnow went 7 innings pitched, didn't allow a hit, only 1 earned run. That was on a walk and a wild pitch. 2 walks, 11 strikeouts. He was absolutely dominant. One of his best games of the year. In Game 2, this was the game that Emmett Sheehan pitched really good. Emmett Sheehan, 7 innings pitched, 3 hits, 1 earned run, 9 strikeouts, only 1 walk allowed. Dodgers destroyed the Rockies 7-2 in this game. Mookie Betts, 2 hits, including a home run. And then in Game 3, Blake Snell, another really good sign, coming off of his previous start where he kind of struggled against the Pirates. 6 innings pitched, 2 hits, no earned runs, 2 walks, 11 strikeouts. Dodgers won 9-0 in this game. Mookie had 4 hits in this game and another home run. The starting pitching has been really, really good as of late. And it's just so interesting and so funny how this team, we know how the Dodgers have struggled the last 2 months and have kind of searched to find their identity or refine their identity. It's almost like the Dodgers have kind of reconfigured the team and their strength, and it's ended up being the starting pitching. It's really funny because the first half of the season, they were the best offense in baseball, and they did not have great pitching numbers because of a lot of their injuries and stuff like that. Since then, though, if you dive into some of the numbers, in the second half of the regular season, so ever since July 18th, the Dodgers have the 3rd best team ERA in all of baseball. So team ERA is both starting pitching and bullpen ERA. If you shrink it down to just starting pitching ERA, they are 2nd in baseball to the Rangers. Ever since in the second half, they've been one of the best teams in baseball in terms of pitching and ERA, team ERA, starting pitching. Obviously, in the postseason, you really want to have good options in the rotation, and a dominant rotation can lead you to a World Series. It would be a completely different route than how they did it a year ago when they won the World Series. That was based off of their bullpen and off their really good offense. It was not their starting pitching. Could be a completely different team this postseason. Have 6 legit guys to go to, and like I said, Sasaki could come back at some point. But Yamamoto's been amazing. We're going to get into him and how he pitched against the Giants. Glasnow, super dominant. Now, in his last start, which was today against the Giants, he pitches twice in this week. Wasn't as dominant as he was against the Rockies, but he did rally and did kind of grind through a start where he didn't have great command. Again, we'll get into that. Snell, dominant stuff. Sheehan has been really good, and he's looking like a really young, promising guy for their future. And then obviously Kershaw, he again wasn't that great this weekend against the Giants. Again, we'll get into that. But the starting rotation has quickly become the strength of this team, which is kind of funny because if you look at the season numbers overall, the Dodgers have one of the 3 best offenses in the game. They are very liable to go cold at some points. And then the pitching would have them kind of middle of the pack. But they, right now, I would say that's their strength. So it's just kind of funny. It's how the season has played out so far. I always said in the first half when the Dodgers had really good offensive numbers, but the pitching wasn't there, I always said I would sacrifice a little bit of offense for some pitching. That's kind of exactly where the Dodgers have been at. I don't have it in front of me, but I did look up at some numbers of what is their team numbers in the second half offensively. And it is actually not as bad as I thought. They're still a top 10 offense in the second half. So not a complete, switch up or fall off, but they haven't been the same offensive team as they were in the first half. But as of late, they've been very good. Dominated the Rockies. It was a good win, a good series sweep. I talked to you guys last week and I said, don't let me get on here and recap a 2 out of 3 series win against the Rockies. I really wanted the Dodgers. I, of course, wanted them to go 6-0, but ideally I wanted them to go 5-1 this week, and they did exactly that. So that's pretty sick. Swept the Rockies 2 out of 3 against the Giants. Like I said, we're going to get into that, but I just wanted to quickly talk about Mookie Betts. I'll talk about him also at the end of the pod because he continued to play great against the Giants. So cool to see. We know it's been one of the biggest topics of the season has been Mookie Betts offensively this year and how he struggled all year. We know without a doubt, whatever Mookie does the rest of the year, it's going to be the worst season of his career offensively. And the numbers had gotten so bad, but ever since August, he's been much better. And as of late, what Mookie's really done is really show that he's not just playing better, but he's seemingly is back to his old self, hitting at that MVP kind of level, which that is really good to see. Because for a little while in August, the numbers were definitely better, but he wasn't hitting for a ton of power. It wasn't slugging a bunch. It was kind of a lot of singles and stuff like that, which you're going to take. The offense that he was giving you in late July, you're going to take anything compared to that. But the numbers weren't overwhelmingly great, but the last 2 weeks, he's really turned it up, hit for a lot more power, a lot more home runs, and that's really ramped up his numbers. And on the year now, he has an OPS of 742, which is nothing to be crazy excited for. Mookie's standards and the tone that he set throughout his career, that's by far the worst. For a lot of the year, even when Mookie was struggling, he was hitting in the 2 spot. And I said he definitely needed to turn it on in the second half, because come the postseason, and when Mookie steps up to the plate, see his numbers flash on the TV, and you're like, why is a guy hitting second in the lineup with a sub 700 OPS? He has really turned it on, and it is so far looking like we're going to look back and look at first half and second half Mookie. So he has saved a lot of his season up until this point. Now, we're still got a long ways to go. We've got 2 weeks to go in the regular season, and then ultimately, what will he do in the postseason? If Mookie can continue this for the rest of the year and do this into the postseason, kind of like he did last year, everyone will have forgotten what he did in the first half and really what he did for this entire season. But like I said, 742 OPS is what he has now on the season, where for a lot of the year, he was in the 680, 690. So he has gotten his numbers to a much more respectable place. He's got 18 home runs on the year now. He's hitting 263, I believe. If he can continue this for the final 2 weeks, get his numbers in a much better spot, again, it will still be a big time down year for Mookie, but playing shortstop every game for the Dodgers this year, if you look at his numbers and he's a slightly above league average hitter with pairing that with great defense at shortstop, if you took away the name, that is actually a very good season. You have to respect Mookie that his season was looking like it was trashed, all the way up until August, and these last 2 months, month and a half, he's played really well, especially lately. At the end of the pod, I'll get into some numbers, what he's done the last 30-plus games, but he has close to an OPS of 1,000 ever since early August. Lately, he's been really good. You can see the quality of the contact off the bat. Mookie's one of those guys where normally, like you'll always hear on the broadcast, when a guy is like smoking the ball right center field, like the opposite way, or left center field if you're left-handed, a lot of times you hear the broadcasters say like, oh, he's locked in. A lot of times you hear that with Freddie Freeman when he's like shooting balls into left center field or going the other way with power. You hear that with a lot of guys. Mookie's kind of different. When you see Mookie is hitting those line drive home runs to left field, left center, like you saw a lot in this Rocky series, that's when you know he's locked in, because Mookie is a smaller guy. He's not going to hit a lot of home runs to center and right field, almost none. What's important for Mookie is pulling the ball in the air with authority, because that's how Mookie's going to get those extra base hits and that slug. That's what he's been so good at throughout his career. If you look at his entire career, it's always been pulling balls to left field. They're on fire, as well as the pitching staff. The pitching staff's just been so dominant. Really, the last thing that they're waiting for is to shore up that bullpen. That's enough of the Rocky series. A lot of good stuff. Really feel good series, something that they needed. They really needed a dominant series over a team in all facets. So let's go ahead and get into the Giants series. All right, so the first game was a little bit disappointing, but game one, this was Yoshinobu Yamamoto against 42-year-old Justin Verlander. Giants got on the board first, a Willy Adames double in the bottom of the first. That was the first hit off of Yamamoto, and it would actually be the only hit Yamamoto allowed. Dodgers were held scoreless all the way through sixth. Later on in the seventh inning, Justin Verlander was pitching well. Michael Conforto, we'll get into him, he homers to dead center to tie up the game. So that was a pretty cool moment. But the Dodgers were held scoreless the rest of the way, and they were kind of ice cold. Eventually, Patrick Bailey hits that walk-off grand slam in the 10th inning off of Tanner Scott to beat the Dodgers. So quickly, I'll just break down that game a little bit better. Yamamoto goes 7, Jack Dreyer for 1 1/3, Blake Trinan goes 1, and then Tanner Scott came in and didn't get an out, so it doesn't show that he pitched any innings. But a really bad game from all facets. The Dodgers didn't hit. They had 4 hits in the game. Did have 5 walks, but they left a lot of guys on base. They were 0 for 5 with runners in scoring position, and they had 9 men left on base. Mookie and Shohei didn't do anything in this game. Freddie had 1 hit. Muncy had 1 hit. Obviously, Conforto had the 1 home run. And then Ben Rortvedt, he had 1 hit. That was all their offense in the game. They didn't do anything off of Justin Verlander, who is 42 years old and came into the game with an ERA well over 4. So, didn't do anything against him. It was bad defense in this game. Mookie actually made an error later in the game. It didn't end up costing them because Blake Trinan got out of the 9th inning. Andy Paz made an incredible throw. It was almost a really cool game. Andy Paz made a really nice throw to throw out the runner at home plate, but really bad base running. Ben Rortvedt right after that got thrown out at third base, tagging up. There was another error in the game. I think it was Paz on the first run that the Giants scored. He bobbled the ball in left center. Didn't hit with runners in scoring position. Just really didn't deserve to win the game because they didn't do enough with runners on base, and then they didn't even play a good defense. So that was really frustrating. But Yamamoto, if you look at the numbers, and I mean really since like August, obviously the entire year he's been amazing, but he's like seemingly getting better as the year goes on. If you go and look at his last 2 starts, he's given up 2 hits in I think 15 2/3 innings pitched. And it's kind of funny because both hits resulted in a run, because the 1 hit he gave up against the Orioles was obviously a home run to Jackson Holliday. And then the 1 hit he gave up in this game to Willy Adames resulted in a run after a leadoff walk. So it's kind of funny that he's been that dominant but still gave up 2 earned runs. But 10 strikeouts in both of his last 2 games, getting a ton of strikeouts. So Yamamoto goes 7 innings pitched, 1 hit, 1 earned run, 1 walk, 10 strikeouts. He had, I believe, 16 whiffs in the game. Just nasty stuff. Put up a cool compilation of his whiffs that he gets on his splitters. His splitter is just so dominant. It's one of the best pitchers in baseball. I actually put this on my X. In terms of run value, it's the 3rd most valuable splitter in the game this year. It is the 15th most valuable pitch in all of baseball in terms of batting average. So against batting average against on all pitches in all of baseball. So like every pitcher's individual pitches, his splitter, I think it's actually the 14th. His splitter has the 14th lowest batting average against. So his splitter just gives up no hits. It's been such an incredible year from Yamamoto. And again, I know that there was times a couple months ago, it's kind of hard to believe that I flirted with other guys being like potential game 1 starter, like Shohei when he was looking dominant. Glasnow's been good. Snell. Yamamoto is their ace. And he really is becoming a top 10 pitcher in the game at just 27 years old. On the year so far, in 162 innings pitched, he has a 2.66 ERA with a 2.96 FIP, a 3.01 expected FIP, 10.37 K per 9. He also has a really high ground ball percentage at 52.2%. He's just one of the best pitchers in the game at getting strikeouts, getting whiffs, keeping the ball on the ground. If you look at pitching run value, he's in the 99th percentile. Fastball run value, he's in the 99th percentile. And then in terms of off-speed run value, he's in the 97th percentile. Expected ERA, he's in the 95th percentile. Expected batting average, 90th percentile. He's got one of the lowest batting average against in the sport. I can't say enough about Yamamoto. He's pitching better, and I think he's going to have a dominant postseason run. We saw what he did last year in his first taste of postseason ball. He was really good. And I think he's going to continue to do that again this year. And don't be surprised if after this postseason, Yamamoto is looked at like one of the best big game pitchers in the game. We saw that with Walker Buehler early in his career. 2018, his rookie year, he was dominant in the postseason. He continued that the rest of his Dodger career, even in 2024, when he didn't have his best stuff coming off of Tommy John, and he really struggled in the regular season. He was really good in the postseason, and I don't be surprised if Yamamoto does the same thing. Actually, I saw this was cool. He's the first pitcher the Dodgers have had to qualify for any kind of like ERA titles and stuff like that since 2022. That just shows how many injuries they've had. That nobody's really thrown this many innings since 2022. 162 and 1/3 innings pitched, 187 strikeouts. So even though Yamamoto is only 5'10", 176 pounds, he still is one of the best strikeout pitchers in the game. It's not just the splitter. Like his actually four-seam fastball in terms of run value has been more valuable than his splitter, which is kind of funny. It's like a unique pitch because it doesn't get a ton of whiffs on it, and it's not overly powerful, but It's not overly powering with the velocity, but it just doesn't get hit hard. He doesn't give up a ton of home runs and stuff like that. You can't really argue. He's one of the 10 best pitchers in the game. He's probably not top 5 because if you were to rank him, you'd probably go like Skubal, then Skeens, then Zach Wheeler. Then you'd probably go like Crochet, maybe Christopher Sanchez. But after that, Hunter Brown of the Astros, then Yamamoto, Logan Webb is in there, guys like that. He's quickly become a top 10 pitcher in the game. And in 252 innings pitched in his young career, he's got an ERA of 2.78. He's off to a really good start in his young career. And I think there's no doubt at some point he's going to get a Cy Young. He's just having such a great year. And he's not going to win the Cy Young this year over Skeens, but he definitely deserves some second and third place finishes. So after that, we'll just talk about some of the other stuff. The Tanner Scott stuff. Another game where Tanner Scott brought into the game, and the lasting image is him giving up a home run. He gave up that grand slam to Patrick Bailey. Dave Roberts is definitely, it's one of the scary possibilities of this postseason, is he is definitely trying to get Tanner Scott to pitch better, which I get. I've come on here and said this to you guys before. If you're going to win a World Series, you need Tanner Scott to be Tanner Scott. You can't win a World Series without him. You can't just leave guys, off, you can't just forget about him. It's been a tough year for him, and even though he has a little bit better expected numbers than his actual numbers, his ERA now is over 5. I think he pitched today on Sunday, so his ERA might have gone under 5. Some of it is not his fault. Dave Roberts, the 2 games he blew, the no-hitter loss and then this loss, he brought him into a horrible situation. He also did get screwed in this game. There was a clear foul tip, strike 3 against Jung-Hoo Lee. For whatever reason, the umpire ruled it a foul ball. It was clearly caught, didn't hit the ground or anything like that, and that resulted in a walk, and then eventually he gave up the walk-off grand slam. So he did say in that post-game conference, again, after the Orioles, that baseball hates him. That's a good example of that, because that's like you're just getting screwed for no reason. Dave Roberts has to stop going to him in high leverage. Again, you can't completely forget about him, but he's got to be lower and lower on the totem pole, like Vesia, Trinan, Jack Dreyer, Edgardo Henriquez. It's kind of funny, the Dodgers' really only weakness at this point, I'd say, is their bullpen. And it's really just been because of 2 guys, Tanner Scott and Kirby Yates. 2 guys you would have never really suspected. Tanner Scott isn't super surprising to me, because he's actually been a guy who's been volatile throughout his career, up and down. Early in his career with the Orioles and the Marlins, he wasn't always as consistent as he was the last couple of years. Kirby Yates has, as long as he's been healthy, he's always been dominant. Now, it shouldn't be too much of a surprise because he's 38 years old, but at this point, I trust Tanner Scott more than Yates. Yates, he pitched in the Saturday game that the Dodgers won. Spoiler, he was the only reliever who came in and allowed runs, and he allowed 3 earned runs. He is quickly pitching himself off of the Dodgers team and off of a playoff rotation. He's a little bit of a different pitcher than Tanner Scott, who he does not attack the strike zone. He relies on a lot of chase because of that splitter, and when he's not getting chase on it, it's going to lead to a lot of counts where he's behind. He's been bad this year, and I don't want him on the postseason roster. I'll accept Tanner Scott, but Kirby Yates, I talked about earlier in the injury update, Brock Stewart's going to come back. There's a good chance he replaces Kirby Yates. I mean, how could you justify having him on the roster? That's all I'll say about the first game. That sucked. Again, it was kind of like the game when Friday night when Tanner Scott gave up that walk-off home run. The Dodgers didn't do enough offensively, and the lasting image is him giving up that homer. And again, I don't want to make excuses for him because he's been bad this year, but Dave Roberts needs to chill out on the high leverage Tanner Scott. He should not really get any high leverage situations the rest of the year. And then I think you should reevaluate come postseason time. What do you want to do with him? I think he's going to definitely be on the postseason roster because they do believe in him, but you got to relax on the high leverage stuff because you just can't deny that he's been bad this year. So let's go to Saturday night. Clayton Kershaw versus Logan Webb. Logan Webb's one of the best pitchers in the game, but the Dodgers do have pretty good numbers against him. Early on, Dodgers get on the board in the first inning on a Freddie Freeman double, but then Clayton Kershaw would go on to kind of give it up in the first. Willie Adames would tie the game on a single. Then Matt Chapman, he singles, puts the Giants up 2-1. And then later on, a couple of A 2-out hit from Luis Matos makes it now 4-1 Giants. So right away, 1-0 lead. Now you're down 4-1. Dodgers had a couple of innings where they couldn't score with runners in scoring position, so you're starting to think they're going right from playing well against the Rockies to nothing against the Giants. But later on, Shohei Ohtani in the third inning, he hits a solo home run to dead center, his 49th of the year, to cut the lead in half. Teoscar Hernandez later in that inning, a big 2-out double to make it a 1-run game. Skip ahead to the fifth inning, Teoscar Hernandez with a couple runners on base, doubles into right center, so another double for him. That puts the Dodgers on top. Fordo would hit a sac fly, and then Ben Rortvedt, he's been amazing. I'll talk about him and Miguel Rojas. He's been amazing in the absence of Will Smith. He hits a double to left center field to make it 8-4, and then Mookie would tack on another run, make it 9-4 Dodgers. You can kind of see the Dodgers, the game got away from the Giants. They did put on some runs. That, like I said, this was off of Kirby Yates to make it a 9-7 game, but then the Dodgers would respond right after that. Miguel Rojas double makes it 12-7. And then later on, they would tally on one more with a Freddie Freeman double, and they would win by a score of 13-7. Clayton Kershaw, he just didn't have it in this game. 3 innings pitched, 5 hits, 4 earned runs, 4 walks, 2 strikeouts. Very similar to that Pittsburgh start he had a couple weeks ago, but this time the Dodgers offense also backed him up, but they were actually able to hold on to the remaining innings and remaining of the game. This game, Shohei, obviously, he had the home run. He had 3 hits. Mookie had 2 more hits, so he stays hot. Freddie Freeman had 3 hits. Teoscar had 3 hits. They had 17 hits in this game to go along with 6 walks, only 7 strikeouts. Like I said, they obviously had 13 runs. What I wanted to talk about was 2 guys that you would have not expected, 2 guys that have contributed a lot as of late, Miguel Rojas and Ben Rortvedt. It's kind of funny, Ben Rortvedt. If you don't know, Ben Rortvedt actually grew up with Gavin Lux, former Dodger, because they're both from the Wisconsin area. Same grad year, I believe, 2016. And Ben Rortvedt's been like a backup catcher, bounced around. I think he came up with the Twins, went to the Yankees, went to the Rays, and then he was actually in some of the Dodgers' like minor trades that they made at the deadline. Of course, Dalton Rushing and Will Smith go down. Ben Rortvedt's been amazing. All the Dodger pitchers have like talked glowingly about throwing to him. He's been calling a great game, and he's had come up with a lot of big hits, and he looks like a tough out too. It's kind of funny, like his first couple at bats when I had never seen him hit before, Pirates, he just swung at like 3 curveballs in the dirt, and I was like, all right, this guy just can't hit. In this Giants series, so many grinded out at bats. He did that twice today against Robbie Ray, grinded out a long at bat and then walked. And then he also blooped in a single. He's been really good for the Dodgers. And what's funny is that you never would have thought that the postseason roster could change in the future. With obviously Will Smith's going to be the starter, but then Dalton Rushing would be the backup. I wonder if there's a chance that, Rortvedt makes it over Rushing, or do they carry 3 catchers and they kind of go about it as Will Smith as the starter, and then Rortvedt is kind of the backup catcher, and then you kind of use Dalton Rushing as a pinch hit bat. It's kind of interesting. I mean, he's definitely going to be around the team and be around the starters, be in those catchers meetings and stuff like that. He seems like a really smart guy. I like the way he calls the game. Looks like he puts a lot of confidence in the Dodger pitcher, so that's cool. And then I just wanted to talk about Miguel Rojas quickly. For some reason, Miguel Rojas is a guy that like gets like shit on a lot for some reason. I think it's because a lot of those stories when he was with the Marlins that he like poured milk in Jazz Chisholm's shoes or something like that, which is not cool. But and for some reason, a lot of people seem to think he's like a fake leader. I don't know. I always see stuff of him on X. Dodger fans always hating on him, but Miguel Rojas is a really good player. And right now, I wouldn't mind if he was getting everyday at bats at second base. I know it's going to mostly be against lefties. Every year that Dodgers have had him, I know his first year in 2023, he was a below league average bat, but he's basically just a league average bat who plays really good defense anywhere you put him. He still isn't the 89th percentile, I think it is, in defensive run saved this year. He's still a really good defender, playing second base and playing some third base, and he's been really good as of late with the bat. So I don't know why a lot of people crap on him. I like Miguel Rojas. He's a team guy. He is a guy who usually is tough to strike out. Just brings value in a different way. And he's not a superstar by any means. He's got an OPS in the low 700s. I mean, a guy who's a bench bat, slash platoon bat. Plays good defense. That's all you can really ask for. I think he's really valuable for the Dodgers. I don't know why a lot of people kind of hate on him. I know last postseason there was that play. He was playing shortstop, and he opted to try to turn to himself. This was against the Padres. In that game, they lost in San Diego, and it snowballed into a massive inning. And so, maybe I know a lot of fans hate that too, but he's really good, and I think he should, if I were to make a postseason lineup right now, it would probably have him starting at second base. But the Dodgers lineup is a little all over the place right now since Tommy Edman has come back. But Dave Roberts has kind of come out and said he's mostly going to play just against left-handed pitching, which means that Conforto is basically a platoon with him. But Michael Conforto's been better. We're going to get him and get into him after Game 3. So, Game 2, Dodgers come back and win. Now, you got a chance to win the series on Sunday. It's a big game because coming off the sweep and then obviously splitting the first two, now one loss or win-win could mean a lot. If you lose the game, now, here we go. That sucks. You lost the series in San Fran, and it's like you're kind of thinking to yourself, well, we swept the Rockies, but that doesn't really mean much because they're the Rockies. You win a game, hey, now we've won 6 of our last 7. We went 5-1 this week, won both series, feeling pretty good. So it's a massive swing game. So Game 3, Tyler Glasnow, Robbie Ray, 2 guys that have had pretty solid years. Robbie Ray actually dug into some of his numbers. Not a ton of great expected numbers, but still had an ERA in the low 3s, similar to Glasnow. And we know Glasnow earlier in the week pitched really good. So, Dodgers get on the board in the second inning, a sac fly from Kike Hernandez. He is starting for Max Muncy, who got the day off. In the second inning, the Giants would respond. They tied up the game with a sac fly of their own. Later on in the third, Tommy Edman, he fielder's choice to make it 2-1. Later on, this is where the Dodgers piled on and kind of separated themselves. Freddie Freeman double makes it 3-1. Michael Conforto singles into right field to make it 5-1. Later on in the sixth, with the bases loaded, Miguel Rojas, who we just talked about, he singles up the middle to make it 8-1. Another Michael Conforto hit makes it 9-1. And then later on, Tommy Edman would also drive in another run to make it 10-2. And that would be the final score. The Dodgers win, take the series in San Fran. Big series win. Big statement. Bats really showed up this whole week. Really, it was just -1 game. Quickly, Tyler Glasnow in this game. He goes 6 innings and 2/3, 3 hits, 1 earned run, 4 walks, 4 strikeouts. The fact that I'm reading that line is actually very surprising because early on in this game when I was watching, Tyler Glasnow did not have it. We talked about it throughout this year. Although there's been times Tyler Glasnow's been super dominant and I really love him and love watching him, he also has had times where he just cannot stop walking hitters and can't find the strike zone. That was one of these games early on today. He could not find the strike zone. He almost was like, it was like watching Michael Kopech start a game. Like he was not finding the zone at all. So credit to him that he really locked in and found a way to get through 6 2/3. He also threw 108 pitches in this game. So Dave Roberts, I've kind of noticed that lately. He's really, relying on these starters as of late. Now, I don't know if that's because he's afraid to go to the bullpen because the bullpen has struggled. You like to see him, hand over some trust to the starters, let them go deep because right now they are the strength of the team, so why not use them? So that's pretty cool. Glasnow, 108 pitches. We saw Yamamoto the last few times throw a lot of pitches. Snell, his last start against the Rockies, the most pitches he's thrown in a Dodger uniform. So Glasnow's got his ERA down to 3.6. Again, shout out to him. He really grinded through this start, and the fact that he only allowed 1 earned run and only allowed 3 hits. I mean, again, it just shows that when Glasnow has his command and he's in the strike zone, he's literally unhittable. Like, all he has to do is throw strikes and you're just not hitting him. In this game, there was a lot of base runners because of the walks. Only 1 earned run, and he was on that sac fly. Only had the 4 strikeouts, so he wasn't, racking up a ton of strikeouts. Only 9 whiffs in the game. Velocity was down a little bit. Just didn't seem the most comfortable out there today. But once again, it just shows how good he is and how talented he is, that even without the, best command and best velo, he still gets, almost got through 7 innings pitched. So that's huge. Continues the streak of this run of dominance from the rotation. And on the year so far, Tyler Glasnow, now again, it's only 82 innings pitched. Doesn't even look like he's going to throw 100 innings this year. But in 82 innings pitched, 96 strikeouts. He's got a whip of 103. an ERA of 3.06. He's in the 91st percentile in strikeouts, 75th percentile in whiff percentage. He is in the 95th percentile in expected batting average. He actually has the lowest batting average against in all of baseball, as well as the lowest batting average against with runners in scoring position, the lowest batting average against with 2 strikes. So he's the hardest pitcher to hit overall, and he's the hardest pitcher to hit when you have 2 strikes against you. The only thing that is going to hold him back from getting a game 2 start or a game 3 start is the walks. Because going into this game against the Giants, if you would have asked me who you're giving the ball to in game 2, it's between Snell and it's between Glasnow, and I would have probably leaned Glasnow. But then again, after this start, the walks can kind of be an issue. That would be a really nightmare scenario if, we're looking in the second inning. Glasnow already has 3 walks and he can't find the strike zone. He does find a way to get through it a lot of the time. And, if he continues to pitch well his final, 2-3 starts of the year, there's a good chance he's going to have a sub-3 ERA this year. Ever since he's put on a Dodger uniform, he's been amazing. It's always just been his health. So, like I've always said, I hope he can stay healthy these last 2 weeks, and I hope we get to see him in the postseason because I envision him doing big things. So, the last 2 things, I just wanted to credit to some guys because obviously in this game, the offensive performers, Mookie Betts had 3 more hits, so he stays red hot. Teoscar Hernandez, 4 hits in this game. He had been struggling for a while, and it's really good to see him play well as of late. Freddie Freeman, all he does is hit. He hits. He throws out 3 more hits. Tommy Edman had 2 hits, so that's pretty cool. Conforto, who actually was on the bench for Alex Call, he gets the pinch hit for Call, and then gets 3 hits off the bench. So 18 hits in this game. They had 6 walks, and then obviously, like I said, the 10 runs. So the offense has been really good as of late. And then, like I said, the 2 guys I just wanted to talk about, 3 guys actually with Mookie, but Teoscar Hernandez, he had 4 hits today. In his last 7 games, he's hitting .344 with a .344 on base, a .688 slug. That is an OPS of 1,032. So an OPS over 1,000 in his last 7 games. He's been swinging a hot bat. Something that's interesting to note is these 3 games coming up against the Phillies, which are massive. The Phillies have all 3 left-handed starters on the mound. We know what Teoscar typically does to left-handed pitching. And it's been a lot better as of late. I told you guys last week how since June he kind of struggled against lefties. This last week, though, much better. So 1,000 OPS for Teo in his last 7 games. Michael Conforto, would you believe, in his last 15 games, 326 batting average, 400 on base, a 440 slug, so not a ton of pop, but a 440 slug, 840 OPS. So if Conforto's going to start hitting for average, by the way, he now has a batting average over 200 for the first time since April. If he's gonna put together a little bit of contact with his pretty good on base skills, it's gonna lead to a good OPS. Kind of know the scenario with Conforto. I told you guys that I wanted him DFA'd. At this point in the year, I don't think it's gonna happen. Conforto, Edman has come back, Muncy's come back, everyone in the lineup has come back. The only guy we're now waiting on is Will Smith, and he's still on the team. I don't think he's going anywhere. At this point, we gotta hope for the best. And in his last 15 games, he's got an 840 OPS. All we got to do is hope he finishes out the year strong and can do it in the postseason. So, Conforto, do I believe in you? Not really. But do I think you can play good? Yeah, it's always been in there. So, we'll see what happens. But, hey, Conforto, 15 games, 840 OPS. I'm going to take that. I love that. And then the last guy to talk about today before we kind of wrap things up with some of the 13 games left to go in the Dodger season, Mookie Betts again. We started with Mookie. I'll kind of finish with him. Early on in August, Mookie's at-bats were looking better, but there wasn't a ton of slug. And then as of late, Mookie kind of went from hitting better to red hot. So I just wanted to note, in Mookie's last 34 games, that's well over a month, that does not include today's game where Mookie had 3 hits. He's hitting .343 with a .405 on base, a .555 slug. That gives him a .960 OPS in his last 34 games. So again, early on, there was a lot of contact, but not a lot of pop. Now, .555 slug, much more pop, .960 OPS, almost 1,000 OPS. He's been amazing this last month. We'll see if he can continue that the last 2 weeks. I would love to see Mookie Betts get his OPS as close to the 770s as he can. I don't know if that's possible. He would have to get pretty red hot, but At the end of the year, if we look up and Mookie has an OPS in the high 700s, huge dub. That's amazing considering how bad he was. He is now on an official real hot streak, and he's really 2 weeks away from kind of saving his season to the point where you can break it down fairly, first half, second half, and then we'll see what he does in the postseason. But all the credit in the world to Mookie. He was in a dark place offensively. He's got an OPS of just under 1,000 in his last 34 games. And like I said, it doesn't take into account today's game where he had 3 hits, so the numbers would be a little bit better even. So that's pretty massive. So that sums up the Rockies and the Giants. Quickly, before we wrap up, I just wanted to note the Dodgers have 13 games left to go. You guys know that I've been kind of looking ahead at the schedule. Here we are, guys. 13 games left to go in the Dodgers season. They will play 3 games against the Phillies. That starts tomorrow night. That is the last massive series of the year. Phillies, Dodgers, two of the 3 best teams in the NL, fighting for that 2 seed. That takes place tomorrow. Then after that, they have 4 games against the Giants. So they have 7 games this week, all 7 days. 3 games against the Phillies, 4 against the Giants. Then after that, the following week, they'll have an off day on that Monday. And then they'll go Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday against the Diamondbacks in Arizona. And then they will wrap up the season Friday, Saturday, Sunday in Seattle. So this upcoming week is their last homestand of the week. They are currently 84-65. Like I said, 13 games to go. So the most wins they could have this year is 97 wins, which would be less than one less than what they had last year. Now, I don't think they're going to go 13-0. It could go, if they could win each series of these last 4 series, and I have them splitting 2 with the Giants. I'm just trying to be rational here. That would give them 92 wins, I believe. They are currently 2.5 games up on the Padres, so you feel good there with the division. Credit to the Phillies. I talked to you guys a week ago, and I said what we really needed was the Dodgers to go at a minimum 5-1 this week. Check mark, they did that. What we needed was the Mets to help out the Dodgers and beat the Phillies. They did not do that. The Mets got swept, and their season is quickly falling apart. Now, the Phillies did lose today against the Royals. That was their first loss of the week when the Dodgers did win. So now the Dodgers are 4.5 games back of the Phillies. So it's still unlikely the Dodgers do catch the Phillies. So probably best to prepare yourself for the wild card round where the Dodgers would probably take on like maybe the Giants, the Mets, or the Cubs or something like that. But it is still possible. 4.5 games. What the Dodgers really got to do is sweep the Phillies to have a chance. If you can sweep the Phillies, that gives you a 1.5 game deficit behind the Phillies. And that means with 3 series left to go, 1.5 games back of the Phillies. Now, some interesting things to look at. Again, I'll talk about this a little bit more tomorrow because I'm going to preview this series. But the Dodgers lost 2 out of 3 the first series against the Phillies. So if they win 2 out of 3 this week, that actually means they tie the season series. And the way that baseball does it nowadays is they don't do any kind of tiebreakers or anything like that. So if the Dodgers and the Phillies split their season series and then somehow they split with the same record in the regular season, the tiebreaker is determined by who has a better record in interdivision, which would go to the Dodgers because they've been the best team in baseball this year in their own division. They have the best record of any team against teams in their own division. So if the Dodgers can win this series, whether it's 2 out of 3 or they sweep the Phillies, and then at the very least they can tie the Phillies in the standings, then they actually can overtake the 2 seed. So if they handle their business this week in Philly and win the series, they actually don't have to overtake the Phillies. They can just they can just tie them, and that would give them the 2 seed. But it's going to be hard to do. The Phillies have done their job. The best thing you can do when a team is chasing you is just keep winning. You don't have to worry about another team. They went out there and swept the Mets 4 games, and then they took 2 out of 3 against the Royals. So here's the Dodgers' chance. Now it's going to be a hard series because you're going to face 3 of the best 25 pitchers in the game, and that's not even counting Zach Wheeler. Again, I'm going to get into all this, but they're going to face Ranger Suarez, they're going to face Jesus Luzardo, and then Christopher Sanchez, who's one of the best pitchers in the game. So we'll see what happens there. Dodgers have been playing well. Phillies have been playing well. 2 seed is up for grabs. We'll see what happens. The Dodgers took care of business this week, like I asked. 5-1. They've won 6 of their last 7. A lot of the guys in the offense are playing well. Shohei's looked really good. Freddie and Shohei are just solid all year. But Mookie, Teoscar, they've been hot. Obviously, Conforto. Now, Conforto's not going to get a ton of at-bats this week because of the lefties. So we're going to need to see left-handed killers of last year. Teoscar, Tommy, and Andy Pages. Pages has been cold as of late, but he did have 2 hits today, or I think that was Saturday night. But that's pretty much going to wrap it up, guys. Tomorrow, massive series against the Phillies. I'm going to preview that. So I'm going to give you guys a ton of information on them. What do they do well offensively? What do they do well on the mound? How's the bullpen looking? Defense. We know their best hitter is Kyle Schwarber. Trey Turner is actually injured right now, former Dodger, as well as Alec Boehm. So they do have some injuries, just like the Dodgers. It's going to be a fair fight. We'll see what happens. I'm going to preview that series, like I said. As always, thank you guys for listening. You can get this podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can follow us on all social media at Talking Blue Pod. Myself, Talking Blue Nick on X, as well as competitive-wiki715 on Reddit. I know it's a weird name, but there's Talking Blue stuff all over it. You can't miss it. So, again, thank you guys for listening. We will see you tomorrow to preview the Phillies and the Dodgers.